Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the electron, not the technical part. I will talk about how I built the community of electron and how the community of electron helped it grow. My name is Chen, and I created the Electron framework. I'm currently working at GitHub and still working on Electron. So if you have ever created an issue at Electron's repo, you might know me because I'm usually the guy who closes your issues. So before talking about the Electron, I need to talk about its history first. It's still a relatively new project, but the history origins from Node WebKit. And if you know NWJS, Node WebKit is the older name of NWJS. So the first edition of Node WebKit is the Node.js module. It's it was not production ready. It only showed that it's possible to combine Node.js into browsers. And then a year later, I joined the development of Node WebKit, and from that time, Node WebKit became a framework that you can develop desktop apps based on it, and it was basically the NWJS you know now. And then a year later, I started the new project named Atom Shell, and it was open source, and then renamed to Electron. So the story of Electron started from Node WebKit. I joined the development of Node WebKit when I was doing internship at Intel. At that time, Node WebKit was the perfect project for interns because it was interesting, it was open source, and the most importantly, no one was using Node WebKit, so it doesn't matter if an intern messed up with it. So I started as the only developer of Node WebKit, and because there were no users, I can just do whatever I want to the project. And most importantly, no one gave a shit about it. So my manager didn't care, and the company didn't care. It was just a project for interns. So for me at that time, the most important thing was to define what Node WebKit should be. So at that time, I decided that I can probably rewrite Node WebKit as a platform to develop desktop apps with HTML and Node.js. And there were already many projects doing similar things, but apparently one of them was shit. And so by working on Node WebKit, I can probably create a new generation project. So after spending a few months developing Node WebKit, I finally got something that really worked. And my manager was happy with it because I was not wasting my time doing unrelated things, and it was a nice result for interns. But a problem for me was it still had no users, so I was just spending a few months entertaining myself, entertaining my manager, but it was not a real open source. So I decided to build a community of Node WebKit and had everyone using it. So the first thing I did was to build a small community. At that time, it was a quite simple one. So I used the GitHub issues for bug reports, questions, and any type of things. And there was a mailing list on Google Group if there were people preferring the old style type of discussion. So after building the community, I started to promote LoadWebKit. And that's the most important thing for new project. You need to make people know your project. So at that time, LoadWebKit didn't have a strong background. Even though it was like a project sponsored by Intel, but there was only intern working on it, and the project was not under Intel's GitHub account. It was actually under the account of an Intel employee who wrote the first edition of NodeWebKit. So when people saw NodeWebKit, they would just think it's a simple project developed by no one. So I needed to advertise it. The thing I did was like posting lots of announcements at different mailing lists saying that I created a new awesome project, just come to use it. Well, then, and some people might be interested in it, and they may ask like very stupid questions. So, well, at that time, no matter how stupid the questions might be, I still need to answer every one of them. So I probably have like my first user. And another important thing was I need to keep publishing new release. So if I just do one release of the project and then did nothing later, people would think this was just a hobby project, and well, if I use it, I will be fucked up in the end. So the most important thing is that you keep releasing new versions of the project. So after I kept doing so, well, I finally got my first user. And that one was actually quite famous. If you knew it, Lighttable was like an editor based on new web technologies, and it was like the first programming project on Kickstack. So it gained lots of, it was a very famous project, and it helped NodeWebKit get lots of attentions. So once we had a first user, we might have the second and then more. So after that, the most important thing became we needed to keep our first users. So how to keep them? Well, there is only one thing to do, just answer their questions and implement the features they want and fix the bugs they are troubled with. So, like, they are getting support from you, and they will be confident in your project. So, the more and more people were using NodeWebKit, and I was doing a good job keeping them. So somehow it started to become famous. So usually when your project became famous, you actually have lots of choices. So you can ask for sponsorship from the big companies who use your project. So you can get money by working on your own project. Or you can ask some of the contributors of the project to get into your team. So you have more people working on the project. Or you can even start a company or career based on your own project, and probably you can make huge money from it. So one of them was just to keep your project growing bigger and bigger. But for me, it was a bit different. So after NodeWebKit became famous, I didn't work on it anymore because if you still remember, I don't own NodeWebKit. I was just an intern that doing internship on the project. So once NodeWebKit became famous, as an intern, I just lost the leadership of the project. And so it basically means I lost the control of the project. It was not my project anymore. So I ended my internship and then started the Atom Xiang project. Atom Xiang, if you still remember, was the old name of Electron. So for the first year of Electron, it was unlike the first year of NodeWebKit because this time, Electron, the developer of Electron was sponsored by GitHub. Well, because they were secretly developing the Atom editor, and they thought NodeWebKit was a great platform, but it was not good enough. So they hired me to work on the new Atom Xiang platform. At that time, I was still the only developer of Electron, but that was fine because my only user is the Atom editor, and all I had to do is to make Atom editor a great product based on Atom Xiang. So after working on Electron for 1 year, it was open sourced together with Atom. And unlike the launch of NodeWebKit, the launch of Electron was quite easy because it was a product of GitHub, and there was an open source project using Electron. So the first day of Electron, we had lots of stars on the GitHub, and we got lots of new users just within a few weeks. So since we were not worried about getting new users, the task for me became I needed to keep Electron a good project, a project that people would be confident to use, and a project that could live for a very long time. So to achieve that, I just needed to keep the project well maintained. So for community, this time the Slack was quite popular at that time, and it's much better than the older IRC channels, and it's very modern. So we used Slack as our community channel, and we also added a small forum for discussions. And this time, for Electron, I didn't use mailing list anymore because it was really hard to use. And for GitHub issues, I used to allow questions for when I developed the NodeWebKit, but that's generally bad when your project became quite big because there would be many people asking questions in the issues, and it would distract the development of the project. And to make the project well maintained, one of the important things is to manage the issues well. Basically, I think the central idea is to answer every issue. I mean, you don't have to do support for every people, but for issues, you need to make people know that this issue had been looked into. So every issue should either be closed or tagged. And if you have an issue that there was no answer and no response that hanging there for a few months, it would make people feel the project had been abandoned. And when closing issues, it's important to let the user know why the issue is closed. Maybe because the issue was a question, or maybe we have duplicate issues. But when closing issues, you have to explicitly tell why you close it. Otherwise, people would be mad about it. And another thing is to give contributors more permissions. So if a contributor can have the permission to close the issues, they may involve more into the project because they would think they are part of the project. Apart from issues, another part of the managing the project is to respect the pull requests. Pull requests are the patches of the new generation. So it represents how people like to contribute to your project. When people create a pull request to your project, they would expect you can review their contribution in time. So, and my suggestion is when there is a new pull request, you should review them as soon as you can, so people can feel valued. And not everyone knows how your project works. So for most of the pull requests, you may have found many problem in them, and when that happens, you should get them through code review. By commenting the problem via code review, people can know your project better, and sometimes when people don't understand your project, code review is a very good way to tell people the details. But it doesn't mean we need to merge every pull request. It would also harm the project because code quality is still above all. So when there are very bad contributions, don't be hesitant to reject the pull request. And if a pull request is not very good but still have value, I suggest always doing refactoring of the code after merging. So the last thing to keep the project well maintained is to make contribution more easier. So there are many ways to achieve that. One of the common things is to have a Bootstrap script, which can automatically set up everything your project needs, like setting up the building environment, like syncing your sub-modules. And it's also important to have detailed documentation on the development of the project itself. Like you can have documentation explaining the architecture of your project and what's your coding style and the best practice for things. And apart from that, you can also tag tasks in the issues for beginners. So if someone is interested in contributing to your project but have no idea on what to do, they can always search for the easy issues and work on that as the first thing. And when the project keeps growing at a certain stage, there would be companies started to using your project. For Electron, we have Facebook, Microsoft, Slack, and various startups building their products based on Electron. And that's really a very good thing. So apart from passion, money is the only thing that can keep open source projects alive. As people are doing business based on the project, they will put resources on it, and the project will always live. And having company users can also attract more users, because when a big company is using the project, people would be very confident that the project can be good and live for a long time. And companies users usually contribute a lot back, because they always have their unique requests, and well, they have lots of developers, and usually those are very good developers. And when they need something, they would choose to build the thing they want and then contribute back. But still, sometimes the company users can actually be bad. So for some companies, they are like your biggest user, and when they have something that needs to be done, you would usually put those things on the top of your to-do list, and sometimes that can disturb your original development plan. And for some users, when they found they need a new feature of the project, or they want to refactor the project for another task, sometimes they just choose to fork your project instead of contributing the things back, because merging changes to upstream can take a lot of time. And for some companies, they just decide to fork the project, and forking can be very bad for open source. So as the Electron keeps growing, at a certain stage, it became a huge task for one developer to maintain. So, like, this is what the emails I got every day. So it's impossible for just me to answer all of the issues, and sometimes there are new pull requests every day, and I need to take lots of time reviewing them. And if I took too much energy into the community, I would have no time for developing the project itself, which can be very bad. So currently, Electron has became a team. So for now, it's not only me working on the project, we have a small team working on Electron. Some of the team members are from other teams of GitHub, and we also hired a few new developers. And most importantly, we are still hiring. So at last, if you are interested in joining the Electron team, you can send an email to this email address, groundwater@github.com. Groundwater is our new manager of Electron team. So if you are interested in Electron, just trouble him. Thank you.